So why do 1 in 14.9 Fife home sellers end up reducing their asking price? Probably a number you weren't expecting, but before we get into it, let's QVT. One in 14.9. Yeah, absolutely. A number of people probably aren't expecting, especially when you're just in the mindset, I'm going to market and I'm selling my home and I'm selling it for this price, and people have that price in their mind. But 1 in 14.9, as the Fife property market shifts, more homeowners are facing that decision of when and by how much to adjust their asking prices or their offers over price. The choice can sometimes feel a little bit difficult, a little bit daunting, and also a little bit reluctant to do it as well. Today's climate, it is often the difference between attracting that buyer or perhaps sitting unsold for weeks, months. The supply of homes for sale in Fife has climbed. So, for example, in August of 2022, there was 1,686 properties. However, August of just this year, there was 1,919 properties available. Now, with more stock available across your kind of KY1 to KY12 and then KY14 to KY16, and that's what we refer to when we say Fife in this instance, the competition for buyers' attention is far greater. That really does mean that you have to be absolutely spot on with smart pricing. And particularly when you do have to do those price readjustments, it's being smart with those as well. And that is absolutely critical. And we hear this and we'll perhaps see a price adjustment, but actually it's gone from perhaps, I don't know, say 200,000 and they've put it to offers over 199,999 or 950, or they've taken like $2,000 off it, which actually does absolutely nothing, because you have to do over a 3% decrease for it to get re-pushed back out on like your Rightmove and your Zoopla. They won't send that back out as a marketing email if you don't do a reduction like that. You just knock it down
people don't often think about that though, Sophie, do they? I think that they're, as you say, they're reluctant to reduce their price because they see it as that. And also just the whole emotion of putting your house on the market. There's that delay in the thought process. Then you get galvanized, you get your agents out, you get your information, you want to plan things. You then make the jump and you say, right, let's go. And then when things don't kind of go maybe the way necessarily everyone's hoped, and sometimes that will just happen, there's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it will just occur that way. They become a little bit despondent very quickly. And so it's a difficult one, isn't it, to kind of galvanize the emotions and just to try and keep the steady ship with the planning. And also how people look at what price reduction really means for them. I think people hear that noise and they think there's something wrong. And so this is going to be a really interesting one to actually explain some of the meat that's around what we're going to talk about, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And listen, when we say this as well, and we can say this quite confidently in terms of our agency, just because we're doing that price realignment doesn't mean we're expecting you to take less for it. It's to attract buyers out there and get people through the door for us then to start negotiations. And actually, and we've had some brilliant case studies, haven't we, Perrie, where we've actually been able to get an offer over what it was on for the very first time it hit the market. We just had to just slow us slightly to get that interest, get the footfall, and then the team were able to negotiate up. And I think that's the key here. But it is an element of, I suppose this isn't what people do day in, day out, so they don't know that. So it's our job to educate, and it's about the mindset of what this actually means. But one of the crucial things, and actually I was only just saying this to a client yesterday, it's about making the most of the property portal price bands, and it really is. It's one of the most simplest things, but yet it is honestly like so overlooked. And it is really about utilising on your Rightmove, your Zoopla, on the market, S1 Homes, wherever your property is perhaps advertised. It's about doing the pricing branding accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these portals group properties into price search brackets, and buyers almost always use those filters. We do. It's just the way that we search for things and we look for things. Not only do we use the minimum one, we also do the maximum one as well. So actually, aligning your asking price within a band means your home appears in more searches and is visible to a lot more buyers. And this is something perhaps if you're looking for a little bit of homework, you could go on and do. You could go on to Rightmove perhaps and look and just do like a little dummy search, and you'll be able to see that it starts off in 10,000s, and then as the pricing goes up, it then hits like 25 different bands, and then even higher price points, it hits 50s. So it goes up in price banding. So for example, listing a property at 400,000 instead of 399,950 places the property in both the 375 to 400 range and then the 400 to the 425 range. And actually, that single adjustment could actually double your audience. And that is the key here. It's about getting the price banding just right. Even for example, the client I was speaking with yesterday, they were wanting to go on at 445. And I was like, well, actually, at that price point, you've got a price band at 425 or a price band at 450. Going on at 445, it's not going to give you any benefit. You're kind of straggling in the middle and you're missing people for the sake of that potentially 5,000. So actually, it's for the agent to guide you and say, look, this is the correct price point to enter in at because you're getting all of the audience.
It's really interesting, actually, because I had the exact same conversation this week as well. And my client said, well, actually, I never search in the price bandings. And I was like, well, 80% of people do. So 80% of buyers who are looking to purchase property will price band it because they want to get out the noise of all the other houses. So they know what their budget is. They may look at their budget and say, well, actually, say my budget's 400, but I'm actually going to look at houses at 375 because my understanding of the market today is that it's offers over, so I'm going to have to pay more. So if I search to 375, I know that I can afford that house that I like. But if you don't have those bandings in place and you don't have that search engine in place, which 80% of buyers do, you're actually making it harder for yourself to be seen. And buyers are actually going to find it difficult to find you. So they'll just move on to something else. They'll just swipe to the next one.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that is one of the key things. But as we said, it's one of the most simplest things as well. And actually, if you don't get it right with your banding, especially as the price points go up, perhaps, it's absolutely critical, and it can be a little bit of a detriment. Now, a question to ask though, Perrie, is when we are looking at realignments, then how much to actually reduce to trigger? Now, we did obviously touch on this, but what do we actually need to do?
Yeah, and I think that is where it's crucial. If you're sitting at 400,000 and then you're changing it to 399,950, it will make no difference to any buyer seeing that. You'll have no additional foot traffic. In actual fact, you may hinder yourself. When it comes to reductions, the percentage really does matter. And for Rightmove to reappear you and to ping you out to its client base of buyers that are registered with them and alert those buyers, you need to reduce your price by at least 2%. So if you're on at 400,000, you really need to go down to 392 as a minimum to attract any new buyer. And for those people to be alerted. So it's really crucial that you get that right. On Zoopla, it's slightly different, and it's what you said earlier, Sophie. Zoopla is actually 3%. So again, it's interesting to look at that different pots. So if you're looking at, say you're at the 400,000 mark, because that's just the price band we were using for the examples, then you'd need to reduce it by 12,000. So suddenly you're coming down to 388. So if your agent is, if you're primarily using Zoopla, because not all agencies use Zoopla and Rightmove, some use one or the other. We use both, but not all do. If your agency is Zoopla, for instance, and you only reduce it by 10,000, then it will make no difference to you. It needs to be reduced by 12 to attract that new market and to have those new alerts sent out. Anything below that will make your reduction invisible, basically, to people. It'll make no impact whatsoever, and it won't attract any new buyers. And if you're relying on those people who've maybe seen it and thought, oh, I'm thinking about it, and then suddenly that reduction comes in, it pings back into their inbox because you've reduced it by that percentage, it's putting that property back in their forefront of their minds. You know, they might be delaying and dallying and looking at a couple of other properties because you've got that opportunity now where there's much more property on the market, as you said earlier, Sophie. So it's about really making sure that you're making the most impact for yourself. And that's crucial. And that really then comes on to you know, looking at what the current Fife numbers look like and how that would influence you in your decision making. But it really is up to your agency to be having that robust conversation with you. And actually, if you're getting directed out with those bandings, I'd be asking the question, are you really understanding what my needs are to get my property sold?
Yeah. That's a very good question to ask.
Yeah, it's a very good question to ask. And I think if you look at current Fife numbers as well for me, so it's no surprise that many Fife people feel reductions that are happening more often than they are, and more than they used to. But the numbers, if we look at them, if we go back to 2022, there were on average 81 price reductions each month in the Fife area in 2022. Today, that figure has doubled to 163 per month.
Wow.
Let me just say that again. So in a 3-year window from 2022, the average price reductions were 81 properties per month in the Fife area alone. Today, that figure has doubled to 163 per month. So it really is crucial that you get your right starting point. And if you have all that initial interest, it's important, I think, to move quite quickly as well when making a move, because the longer that a property sits there, the more negatively it will appear to people. People automatically assume that there's something incorrect about the house, even if that's not the case, but it will be assumed that way. And that's why marketing the property is crucial, to get that right price point, but also to look at how you then generate that interest if it's not happening for you. So interestingly, the proportion of reductions has stayed broadly stable over time. On average, 1 in every 14.95 homes, as you say, or 6.7% each month, see a price cut. And this has been consistent over the past 5.5 years, despite a sharp rise in the total stock of homes for sale. So whilst we see a slight increase, it actually has been a stable process that we've seen. And I think that there is an element of it still, and this is me just going off piece here, but this is my thought process. For me, it's the element of post-pandemic.
Oh, 100%.
We keep talking about it, and I know it was 5 years ago, but actually you're still seeing the impacts of that, because at that time people were paying astronomical sums over home reports for properties. They were even paying that for properties actually that they then had to improve. So what we have seen, and certainly I have had examples of this in certain areas of Fife, where someone may have paid 40 to 45, 50,000, say, over the value of a house. They've then gone on to do home improvements. They've put new kitchens, new bathrooms in. They've maybe spent another 30,000. So actually, over the past 5 years then, with what they overpaid for the house and what they've spent on it, they've spent, say, 70 to 75,000 pounds on a property. So say that property was valued at 400, they're now sitting at 475. The expectation from that seller when they then come to sell in today's market is that they're going to get more than that for their house. But the reality is that that was that person's choice potentially to pay 50,000 over. Yeah. And actually what we're looking at doing is taking into account the improvements that they've made, and then any indexing improvements just naturally on the improvement prices and percentages in that location per square metre of that type of property. And so some people are getting a little bit of a surprise, and I've had that frequently, and I know you have as well.
Oh, 100%, absolutely. And that's where it does get difficult, absolutely. And it is hard, and we're still, and as you say, Perrie, I know it seems like we speak about it quite a lot because it does seem obviously like a distant memory now, but it still has an impact, and there is obviously still people that are in that position. But it is crucial. It is crucial to get that right pricing, because there's no point saying and us just agreeing and going, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we can get you that because that's what you paid for. That's what you're a loss of. That's absolutely fine. We can do that, because that's the whole point of this. That's then going to have you sitting on the market and potentially sitting and going stale and not getting sold. And then you become one of these statistics that ends up reducing And actually, it might not even mean one reduction. That one reduction still might not have that impact. So you have to do a second one as well. And sometimes you do see that. It's not necessarily just one price reduction. And I think there is a lesson here, absolutely, that more homes on the market inevitably means more reductions. That's just natural.
It's
However,
the percentages and it's the multipliers, isn't it?
Exactly, absolutely. And we see that quite a lot when we do these shows, don't we? We always compare back. It's inevitable. It's obviously just with the stock that's there, but the consistent percentage does indicate that the real issue is actually not the market itself, but rather how properties are perhaps priced from the outset. Whereas if you start with a realistic figure, not only does it give you a better chance of receiving early offers and actually, getting moved on in your journey, but it actually also reduces the need for that painful kind of cut and having to kind of swallow that hard pill that we know obviously clients sometimes have to do. And it helps your property stand out from the perhaps crowded Fife marketplace, especially in some micro regions within Fife. There's definitely some overcrowded areas.
There are, and I think it is important to get your structure price right. But actually, I don't want this to sound like a bit doom and gloom, because actually, this could be a really great strategy as well for getting foot traffic. So
100%.
Just because you're doing a price reduction doesn't necessarily mean to say that you're selling your home for less. All you are doing is attracting the buyers that haven't seen it yet. And that's really important that you appreciate that. It's about attracting the buyers who you haven't seen it yet. We had a prime example where we did that recently with someone. The price was reduced because the foot traffic wasn't there. It gained that additional foot traffic. And actually what then happened was the property was sold for in excess of the offers over price that we originally had on, because suddenly you've got people coming through the door and it becomes a more attractive proposition for them. And a little bit of competition as well, because that's what foot traffic does. Of course it does. So don't feel that this is all doom and gloom. It's absolutely not. I'm going to cover off quite a bit of stats in this part of the show and then the numbers. So again, if you feel that it's a bit overwhelming to listen to us talking about it, if you click on the link, you'll see the whole article. You can sit and read through it, digest it, and have a look at it yourself, because we've got some graphs and things we're going to show as well. So again, just so this is an important subject. So if it affects you and impacts maybe your next moves, it's good to understand how you can understand it fully rather than just listening to us.
Yep, absolutely. So in 2020, we're going to go way back to 2020. There was an average of 4.7% of the 1,767 Fife properties for sale each month had their asking price reduced. So 4.7% of just shy of 1,800 properties reduced their asking price. Then we fast forward a year to 2021. And an average of the same percentage, actually 4.7%. However, it's actually on a number a lot less of 1,248 properties for sale each month. So same percentage of 4.7, but on a lot less volume at just 1,248. 2022, we jumped to a 5.6%, and this is on 1,415 Fife properties for sale each month that had their asking prices reduced or realigned. 2023, there was an average, again, a bit of a jump to 7.8% of the 1,664 Fife properties that were for sale each month, again, reduced. So you can see that number creeping up. It creeps up again in 2024 to an average of 9.3% of the 1,827. So naturally it's gone up because, as you can see, there's more obviously properties available at 1,827. And then finally for this year, obviously year to date so far, there's an average of 8.8% of the 1,859. But actually, if we just take a second to look at that, so actually we're not even through the full year of 2025 yet. There's a lesser percentage than last year, but there's actually more stock available. So there's 8.8% actually on 1,859. However, last year there was 9.3 of 1,827, and we've not even finished this year yet, although granted it's flying in. We've not finished it yet. So that just shows you how the percentages increase, but it is also relative to what stock's available, apart from where obviously we've tailed off at the end just there.
Yeah, and the more stock available, the more percent there's going to be. That's just the law of numbers and the law of averages, isn't it?
Of course, absolutely.
But I think absolutely getting the ideal pricing strategy to begin with is vital for anyone selling their home at the moment. And I think the way that you set your asking price at the outset really significantly impacts both your speed of which you'll sell, the success of your sale as well, because it's not just about the speed of your sale, it's also about the success of your sale. And what I mean by that is actually going through the whole process of the conveyance to the completion from money in the bank, keys handed over. So there's a whole process that needs to be gone through there as well. And generally what we see is the overpriced ones that come to market usually sit longer at the beginning. They sit unsold for longer. They might require bigger reductions as well, which again, you may need to do that to tempt new buyers. But if it eventually does go under offer as well, what you sometimes will see is that actually they may not necessarily reach the completion point either. So yes, there is a higher percentage fall at the last hurdle on the longer listed properties for sure. And definitely that's what we see across the board. And when we've done all these other shows, we continually see that trend, don't we, when we talk about, at the moment, I mean, Fife's in a really good position and it's stronger than the average, but at the moment, 83% of properties in Fife do complete. But the that 17% are probably the ones in there who have maybe withdrawn because something's changed in their circumstances, they've decided not to sell after all, or they've withdrawn because actually they've maybe had to do a reduction, the market's not been ready for that property at that price, and they've just thought, do you know what, I'm not selling just now then, I'm just going to wait and relist another time. And sometimes you'll get that, but it's about doing the right things at the right time and making sure that you really understand what your starting point is and be guided by that.
Absolutely. So then there is actually some independent research that was done, and this was from Denton House, where we get obviously all of our kind of facts and figures from, and this is for the UK. This isn't Fife related, obviously Perrie's just touched on Fife related just there, but UK. So when a UK property sells subject to concluded missives within the first 25 days, they had a 94% success rate of actually reaching that completion, compared with only a 56% for those that took more than 100 days to secure. So actually, your chance of that actually concluding nearly halves, which is scary to think. Not only have you been on the market, obviously, you know, with uncertainty for over 100 days, you then get that buyer and you're like, yes, we finally, after over 100 days, perhaps we've got that buyer, this is great. But actually, the chance of it actually concluding and completing drops to 56%. So you're almost kind of just sitting there waiting and you're like, is it, isn't it, is it, isn't it? And you just don't know, which is actually a really daunting thought, and it's a scary thought. And again, one that people probably aren't aware of or expecting. And nobody wants to be in that position. I think that's kind of the key, and obviously the topic here is about starting with that realistic figure gives you the best chance not only to attract early offers, avoid a long obviously sale process, but also then eliminates the chance of it falling through or something cropping up in that conveyancing process that means it doesn't conclude. And then ultimately you fall into obviously this statistic. Now we have got a graph to pull up, don't we, Perrie? Let's do the first one. So you should be able to see that just there.
Yep.
So this is for the percentage of Fife homes reduced their asking price. Now, just to emphasise, this is for all Fife estate agencies. This isn't just ourselves, this is for all agencies within Fife. And this is from 2020 to 2025. Now, it's for the percentage of homes that were on the market that had their asking price reduced that month. So obviously, as you can see, you've got the percentage going up, and then you've got the months and obviously the years going along the bottom. So that just shows you've got that massive drop in 2020, and then it kind of just steadies along, and then there's a really high peak, and then it peaks again, and then you can see it crashes again in 2023, 2024, and it goes back up, and then it teeters again, and then it comes right back down in 24, entering into January of 2025, and then it starts to creep back up, and you can see it just creeping off as it tails off, obviously, to where we are up to in terms of July 2025. Obviously, this is the most up to date, but it does let you see, and sometimes that does help getting that visual kind of representation.
I think it's important as well, not just to talk about the years and months along the bottom, but if you look down the side, when we're looking at those percentages, they jump in bands of 2%. So 0, 2,
Yeah.
4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. So when you see its highest point here, that's about 11% we're sitting at. So I think to put that in real terms, 8 to 9% of properties are completing, because I think, again, this can be quite a scary visual, isn't it? When you see all these pictures thinking, oh my God, nothing's selling. The reality is 8 to 9% of everything is selling. And the average in Fife is 83%. So actually, it's not a negative trend.
No, absolutely
Which
not. And I think
important.
that's why the next graph then, Perrie, is probably again allows to see that. This is the next one, and it's so the red is for the number of homes for sale, and then the yellow is the number of price reductions. And again, this is all agencies, and it's from 2020 up until July of 2024 for this one. So not going on as long as the last one. This is just in July of 2024. But again, it allows you to see that trend.
Mm-hmm. And that's really just duplicating exactly what we've spoken about when you look at the numbers of homes here versus the numbers that are reducing. It's
Absolutely.
all relative, and it's showing exactly that 10%, 11% trend. Because again, here you've got in the red, they're going in bands of 500, 2,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. Then here it's 0, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. So again, the 2,000 here for sale across here to the 200 reductions, that's that 10% point. So again, it's a real easy way to show that, isn't it?
Absolutely, definitely, especially for those that obviously appreciate more of a kind of visual representation. But again, you'll be able to click the link and see these graphs as well, and get kind of really look over them and drill down on them. But I think the key message here that we are trying to obviously get across is obviously pricing, and those that start with that higher pricing should almost be just aware that you might have to look at reducing your price, and actually acting within, say, the first 2 to 4 weeks can keep your property perhaps from going what we would call stale or sticky or not moving on. If you let it go on for months and months and months, not only is that making your process longer as well, and it kind of stops you in your tracks and stops you getting moved on with your journey, but it also reduces your chances of achieving that kind of quick, successful sale. And again, it all comes down to mindset. If we leave it for months and months and months, buyers out there and people that are looking will then start to question, actually, is there something wrong with the property? Why? If we're leaving it for months and months and months. So actually, we still need to strike while the iron's hot. And if we can do it within the first couple of weeks or the first month of it hitting the market, we still have an option there before we start going really stale, because that is not what we want. Because ultimately, you've put your property on the market for a reason. There is a reason why everybody sells, and actually we want to get you moved on your journey. So that all starts with the pricing. But now there's kind of 6 things that we would say, Perrie, that people should consider when reducing a price. What would you say are the kind of first couple that you would advise?
For me, the key one absolutely is to get your viewer feedback. So if you have had viewings that are taking place, people are interested, they've attracted buyers, you need to understand what their feedback is. So if they are consistently saying that in their view, the property is overpriced, take note of that. That's a real thing. And certainly if your agency is not finding out that information, challenge them to do so. Because actually, we always say this to our people, don't we? If people have viewed the property, they go, I liked it, and they don't give you a specific reason, and they'll say, well, actually, yeah, the kitchen wasn't quite as big as I'd anticipated, or whatever the reason is that they've given you. But at the end, we will always say to them, had that not been an issue for you and you were willing to offer, do you think that you would offer over the home report price, and is it realistically valued? And we always get that price feedback, and it's really crucial to do that, because they know if we're on the right cards, because then we know it's priced right, it's getting people through the door because it's priced right, so it must be something else. And it's about uncovering all that items. So for me, absolutely, getting your viewer feedback's really important, and consistently getting that feedback's important as well, because then if you start to see a trend where everyone's saying a lower number, then actually the market, irrelevant of what the home report is, a house is only worth what someone will pay. And if the market's telling you, I wouldn't pay that for that, then a conversation needs to be happening, doesn't it? So for me, absolutely number one is the feedback from the viewers on the pricing. The second one, I guess, is your market saturation. So take a close look at how many Fife houses are selling in your location. You know, has there been quite a few that have sold in your street? Are there a lot of current listings that are, say, a 3-bed semi-detached property? And what are they pricing like? What is that condition versus your condition? And that's important to look at those things as well. If some of them have sold, if you're comparing a 2-bedroom semi, for instance, that's sold and listed the same time as yours, and yours is still sat, you know, what's making that different? Why is that happening? So ask yourself some honest questions as well. Does your home stand out is the big thing. So has the market strategy been done properly? Have you got your pre-portal? Have you got your personal property tour video? Have you got all your sponsorships so that it's pinging out in social media to everybody? You know, how is it getting marketed? Friends and family can also provide uninterested and uninvited and unfiltered feedback. So I think sometimes it's important to ask them, but sometimes it's also important to take what they say with a pinch of salt. But if it doesn't stand out your house, the simplest solution is to perhaps just reposition your price and make it look more competitive. And sometimes that could come into play, because if they're mirroring the same, or one's in your kitchen, your one isn't, but you don't want to invest in putting that new kitchen in, maybe that slight adjustment of that 2 or 3% just may make the biggest difference to you getting sold and getting moved on. So that would be my main kind of 2 things, I would say. What else should we be considering, Sophie?
Also, you need to consider, because obviously we're doing this just now, but it depends what season you're actually on the market as well, because that comes into a play. Are you perhaps on the market in spring and early summer, where it naturally tends to be busier? That is when people tend to be more active in the marketplace, because it does change pace throughout the year. And then you come to November and December, and things do go a little bit quieter. For buyers, yes, but this is also a time when we actually educate that this is a great time to go to market and sell, because there is less competition, and that's a brilliant show that we actually did that you can watch. So yes, for buyers out there, sometimes it gets a little bit quieter, but actually as your seller, this is the prime time to go, because there's so much less competition. And actually, if you want more details on that, I did a market update last week, which actually pulled all of September's figures. And that gives you a brilliant insight, because one week doesn't make a trend, but seeing that full monthly roundup, you'd be surprised. I think it's a bit like what Perrie said, don't listen to sometimes that white outside noise, because actually the figures that I pulled and showed were really telling. So actually, these kind of months perhaps are the best month for you to go to market, especially if you're looking for that spring move. You really need to be going to market now, because average selling time and conveyancing time, so definitely factor that in. But seasonal shifts do play a part on that as well, absolutely. So if you are marketing in a quieter period, what are you doing to be proactive about that? Yes, obviously it's still about having your prime, positioning with your photography and your video works and really getting pushed out there. But your pricing is also crucial as well. That goes to play in all seasons. It absolutely does. But it's definitely key. And then something as well, and it's almost like it's screaming you in black and white, it's screaming you in the face, is if you are getting plenty of viewings, you're getting people through the door, but actually on the back of those viewings, you've had no notes of interest, you've had no offers, there's not even been a sniff of anything, but you've had, say, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 viewings. And we've seen that sometimes with properties. And this isn't just Fife related. This is, take this into account if you're watching this and you're not within Fife. But having the viewings but no offers kind of tells you they're in black and white. Now, they do tend to say within the UK as an average, it usually takes between 8 and 10 viewings to generate that offer. Now, you do get the anomalies, and especially in Fife where it's quicker, you could perhaps get sold from social media, couldn't you, Perrie?
Yeah. And we do.
You could get sold from social media, you could get sold in the first view, in the second view, and third view. But as an average in the UK, it's around 8 to 10. Now, if your Fife home is receiving numerous viewings in the first month, but still no offers, that kind of tells you that it's perhaps the pricing, unless there's something else that screams out. But as Perrie said, this is where your feedback is absolutely crucial. But if you've got the viewers but nobody's biting, it's perhaps telling you that it's priced just too highly once people are getting through the door and perhaps seeing it. Now, many people do not like to accept what they perceive as a kind of cheeky low offer. So they just walk away. Now, some people will. Some people will be like, oh, you don't know until you try, here's my offer. And it's like a proper low ball. But some people also just won't. So actually, if we can look at all those viewings and say, okay, this is that feedback, we're not getting anything, it's time to look at the price, and it's time to have a conversation with your agent, look at the price banding, don't forget that, and then look at what your new price is, taking into account your 2 or 3%. Now, obviously, I touched on that low offers. Now, it's just the nature. Buyers in Fife start low. We like to go in, start low, get a feel for it, gauge it, and see what flexibility there is. Again, it's almost like that you don't know until you try. Sometimes it could be due to broader market conditions. Sometimes it's perhaps work that the potential buyer feels that they need to do to the property. And sometimes it is just a plain old simple negotiating tactic, and they're just trying their hand. And it's as simple as that. But as Perrie, you've said, and it's something we talk about a lot, a property is only worth what somebody is willing to pay, what they are comfortable offering for their next home, not what you or even your agents say. Yes, you're absolutely, that's your home. You think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and you think somebody should pay X amount over, absolutely. But realistically, it's what somebody's willing to pay. And if the gap between offers and your asking price is wide, and it's not just, 5,000, 10,000, if it's a wide, then again, that's something we need to address and look at obviously where we can perhaps meet in the middle, or actually come down to those low offers and be more realistic.
Yeah.
And then finally is if you've hit the market and nothing's happened, either little or absolutely no interest. Perhaps you've been on for a couple of weeks, viewings are scarce, if any. Start by, firstly, look at your photography. And this should be something your agent should be bringing to you and having this conversation with you. Reviewing your photography and actually your marketing and how the property's presented. With that, how it's presented online as well. And actually, what is your agent? What has your feedback been like from the agent? What are they telling you? Have they sent out any home reports? Has there been any inquiries at all? And again, if there's been very, very little, and you're happy with everything else and how it's been proposed to the market, then the price is almost certainly the issue. And an early, well-timed reduction and not leaving it those months and months, like we said, can actually reignite that interest and be just what you need. Because all you need is that one buyer. You just need that one person to walk through that door, and that could be your buyer. You don't need floods and floods and floods. We just need somebody to negotiate with, and that is the key here, because you don't want it to become overlooked. And that is the 6 key tips to look at when you are looking at reducing your price. But your agent should be able to guide you as well. This shouldn't be like a one-man band where you're having to do all this heavy lifting. Your agent should be able to guide you through the process.
And I think that's the key thing. It's about having that open and honest, matter-of-fact discussion, isn't it? I think for me, my kind of last point would be that, absolutely sometimes honest feedback is difficult to take, but actually you need to have that discussion. You need to have a truthful discussion. You need to be able to hear it and take that guidance as well, and decide what's right for you. But you'll only be able to do that if you educate yourself properly and you've got an agent that you're having those open and frank discussions with. And for me, that's crucial. And making sure that your marketing is the best that it can be. You've got that great photography, you've got your video work in place. If all of those things are in place, then it is definitely price.
Absolutely. I think that's a good way to end it, Perrie.
It is. Fantastic. Lovely. That's us for this week then. Take care. Thanks all.